right, thank you, Ida. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Monterey Regional Waste Management Authority Board of Directors. This is different an authority which has been formed, if I understand, to manage approve our debt and bonding. That's the reason why we have an authority as well as the regular board. For July 21, 2023, 9 a.m. Do we know any just cause notification emergency circumstance request regarding AB 2449?
I did not receive any.
Okay, thank you. Roll call, please.
Director Askew. Director Barber. I'm sorry. Let me start again. Chair Campbell.
Here.
Vice Chair Shirley. Here. Director Lasker.
Here.
Director Delgado.
Here.
Director Blackwalder.
Here.
Director Askew. Director Peak.
Here.
Director Barber. Director Ferlito. Here. We have a forum.
All right. Thank you, Ida. Would you please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance? The Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Thank you. If there's we'll open public communications. If there's anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on the agenda, may do so now. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered by the board. For information about submitting public comments in writing in advance of the meeting, please see the meeting information section of this agenda. So public communications is open. Is there anyone online who wishes to speak, or if you're in the chambers, please approach the podium. Okay, seeing no one, will close public communications. Moving on to the consent, these matters include routine financial and administrative actions, which are usually approved by a single majority vote. Individual items may be removed from the consent for discussion and action. So items 1 is approved minutes, January 2023 regular authority board meeting. Item 2, adopt resolution 2023-1-A establishing investment policy guidelines for authority for fiscal year 2023-24. Is there any member of the board who would like to remove either item for further discussion? Seeing none, any member of the public who wishes to remove an item or speak on the consent agenda in general? Now's your time, public communications on the consent. Okay, seeing no one online, no one in the chambers, will close public comment on the consent. If we could have a motion, please.
Move to approve the consent.
Second. Thank you, Kim, and thank you, Bruce. We have a motion to second. No further comments, I assume. So all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries with unanimously with all those present. And moving on to
Excuse me, Chair.
yes.
I thought when board members were remote, we had to do a roll call.
I think so, but we do not have any.
Is it Ted on our board?
No.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No worries. All right. Other correspondence 3. This should be familiar to us because we did this as a regular board letter from the Special Districts Risk Management Authority regarding notification of the election ballot for the SDRMA Board of Directors election. So in the last board meeting, I believe we nominated 3 of the 4 incumbents. We nominated three incumbents. Is there any comment from the public on this item?
I shall not.
Okay, we have no closing public comments, if we could get a motion. Well, I can make a motion that we nominate the 3 incumbents as we did consistently with the board. So if there's a second.
Second.
All right, thank you, Bruce, first. No further discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Okay, it's unanimous and with all those present. General Manager Communications Office.
No, I have none.
Okay, thank you, Felipe. Any more communications on this? There's no closed session. Seeing no further business, I am adjourning this meeting to the next meeting date of January 19th, 2024. Thank you, everybody. Moving on to a regular meeting of the Board of Directors. I'm calling it to order for July 21st, 2023 at essentially 9:10 a.m. I'll double check with Ida. Again, there's no just cause notification, emergency circumstance requests. All right, thank you, Ida. And then roll call, please.
Chair Campbell,
Here.
Vice Chair Shirley,
Yes, here.
Director Laska,
Here.
Director Delgado,
Here.
Director Blackwelder,
Here.
Director Askew, Director Peak,
Here.
Director Barber, Director Polito. Director Polito? Yes. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ida. We just already pledged our allegiance, so I think we'll skip over that. Just want to say real quick that we're gonna reorder the agenda a little bit. We're gonna take number 9 out of discussion action and move it to after the closed session. And so if there's any actual item coming out of closed session, that would be the time we could do that. So we're all clear on that. All right, so public communications. Anyone wishing to address the board on matters not appearing on the agenda may do so now. Please limit comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. The public may comment on any other matter listed on the agenda at the time the matter is being considered by the board. For information about submitting public comments in writing in advance of the meeting, please see meeting information section of this agenda. If any member of the public wishes to address the board, please approach the podium or signify online. Seeing none, I'm closing general public comment. Moving on to the consent. These matters include routine financial and administrative actions, which are usually approved by a simple majority vote. Individual items may be removed from consent for discussion and action. So we have 5 items. 1, approved minutes of June 23rd, 2023. Regular board meeting. 2, approved report disbursements and board and employee reimbursements for June 2023. 3, authorize the general manager to execute the contract for a waste characterization study with SCS Engineers of Long Beach, California. The cost of the services will be billed on a time and materials basis with a not to exceed cost of $244,000. 4, authorize the general manager to enter into an agreement with Mapistry to provide a regulatory compliance and process management software resource solution for ReGen's business operations. 5, declaration of surplus equipment, 2005 Cat D9T dozer, 2010 Volvo water truck, and 2 2009 International semi trucks. Is there any member of the board who wishes to pull any items for further discussion? Item 3, thank you. What else? Those pulled. Item 3. Is there any member of the public who wishes to pull any of these items for further discussion or make comments in general on the consent items? Please approach the podium or signify online if you wish to make a comment on the consent. All right, seeing no one, we're closing public comment on consent. If we can have a motion to approve every 1 through 5, less 3, that'd be great.
Move to approve 1, 2, 4, and 5.
All right.
Second.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
thank you. And, thank you, Jerry. All right, I'm motion a second. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Hearing none. Passes unanimously with those present. Okay, item 3. Do you have a specific question? Would you like to hear a report from the staff first?
I have a couple of questions.
Wait,
What would you like to do?
Pardon? Yeah,
I
okay.
think it would be appropriate for the questions, and then I and David will do the best to answer your question.
Okay, great. My primary question is, what kind of legal responsibilities does the district have in regards to acceptance of non-member agency landfill? And in particular, of course, the 1383 goals for the state of 75% diversion. And I was also, obviously, this one in the TAC issue report speaks to considerable effort by the member agencies to reach that 75% diversion goal. What kind of outreach do we have to the non-member agencies in that regard? And that strikes to this particular item, if they're not looking at what they're sending to the landfill, then how are they in a good position to meet the recycling goal? So too long-winded questions.
I think I followed it.
You know, I think it's a good question. You know, the chair asked the question in our review of the agenda items of materials that would meet the specification for 1383 coming into the district. So as in legal obligation to provide a service to outside member agencies, I believe we have none, and I could be corrected.
I think that's correct. Yeah.
And as for the material being analyzed through this, it would be only member agencies material. We will extend to outside member agencies if they would like to render outcomes from a characterization study for them as well. We do know that the San Jose material that's coming in, which is a large volume of our material coming in, is already inert material. It's been processed, it's been harvested, all the materials coming out, whatever is left is the remaining inert that would not be recyclable. So it does not need to be processed. It just should not be characterized at that point because everything's been pulled out of that material at that time. But it would, again, I think it will rely on those outside agencies to participate for them to meet that mandate, just like any of the member agency cities would. At this time, I would ask David if you want to comment on anything, and also Guy Petroborg is on the line as well.
Yeah, as far as outside agencies, non-district entities, they would participate at their own cost, and we'd offer it if they wanted to. It's not a part of the study or part of the cost that's included in this waste characterization study. So we will extend it while the team is here doing the sort. They can participate if they put in the money to take care of their portion of the study.
Hey,
Yeah, please.
so our legal obligations in terms of accepting non-member agency landfill is only to report. I assume it's to Cal Recycle the volumes that they're sending here. I mean, there is at least that legal obligation, isn't there?
I think they would just.
Yeah, I can answer that. This sort in particular is separate than the regulations of SB 1383. So as part of SB 1383, we do a quarterly sampling of the materials that are coming out of the MRF and also some of the materials that go into the landfill. That study is very specific to the regulations, and it's done per Cal Recycle's methodology of what they want us to look at. And that is a different methodology than what's being presented here. We don't feel that's a good enough characterization for what we're looking to get out of the study. The Cal Recycle study has us doing one sample of waste each quarter. That's a single 200-pound sample. So that we don't feel is enough to extrapolate all the waste that's coming in here. And therefore we can't take that data and use it. That's what the regulations say we have to do. So we are doing those sorts. However, this sort that's being presented under this agenda item is to look at the waste that's coming in here, that it's going to be a statistically significant sampling of the waste. And they're going to divide it into things that ReGen is interested in. How many recyclables are in the waste stream right now? What's the percentage of organics? And the characteristics of those organics. Which organics can we extract from that waste stream and you put to use? Did that answer your question?
Is it?
Not almost,
Yeah.
not quite. I was trying to understand the legal obligations between, I say our neighbors, so thank you for that information on the San Jose. Obviously, our neighbors to the north, Santa Cruz is sending landfill.
I think
other.
Those are contractual. Those are contractual obligations.
Yes, contractual, exactly. And I'm wondering about the reporting requirements for the district for that material. Do they?
Is it fair to say though,
All we do
that
is-
every jurisdiction is responsible for their own reporting and to Cal Recycle or whatever to the state, if they're meeting 1383, the individual jurisdictions.
That is accurate.
that's correct.
Yeah, and are we doing any outreach to say our neighbors to the north that are sending landfill about the efforts that the TAC is doing that find out if they're doing anything?
That'd be Zoe, I think,
I can answer that
through the
question.
chair.
That's a great question. So we contractually are not obligated to provide that. It's not a full service scope as it is with our member jurisdictions. That said, we do work with those those non-member agencies, for example, Watsonville, Scotts Valley, Santa Cruz County, who do bring us materials specifically for the organics. And we let them know what our acceptance lists are and then how they go about and educate either through their haulers or directly if they're providing that hauling service, as in the case of Watsonville, is up to them. Just like here in district, much of the education is handled by the haulers, Green Waste, Monterey Disposal, and Waste Management. So we provide what the acceptance lists are and what the problematic items would be, for example, per stream, and then they go forth and educate their constituents.
Okay, and thank you, and in the future, starting, I guess it's 2024, if the non-member agencies don't meet their diversion goals, that's their problem, right? We have absolutely no legal, the district has absolutely no legal obligation in that regard. They're, great,
Correct.
thank you. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's great for the clarification. With the guy took his hand back down, so I guess the questions were answered. Anyone else?
Move approval of the recommended study.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
I'll second.
Thank you, Kim. All right, so it's been moved that we authorize the general manager to execute a contract for waste calculation study with SES Engineer of Long Beach, California. The cost for the services will be billed on a time material basis with and not to exceed cost of $244,000. Is there any public comment on item 3? Please approach the podium or raise your hand if you're online. All right, seeing no one, I'm closing public comment on item number 3. On the second, as best as I understand this is we're almost taking an initiative to take a deeper dive, come up with something more statistically significant that we can use as well as what member agencies can use as I mean, the lid flipping, which was interesting, was presented over and over again as this is not a good sample, whereas what's actually.
Through the chair, and, you know, this is a dovetail to some of the other items that we're working on. We're currently working on the feasibility study, which is looking at the best usage of those byproducts. So they're gonna come hand in hand. What's still in the stream? What is on the outskirt of technology and innovation that we could capture and deliver those materials to, rather than delivering to the depository of the landfill space that we have available. So continuing to look what's in the stream, what technologies are available, what is gonna work between agency and agency, or singular or an agency, and to try to push those items based on the information and the data and the feedback that we get from the study itself.
And the last time we did something like this was
2013, and then like David said, we have periodic ones that are under the Cal Recycle obligation, but they meet a minimum standard compared to what we're looking and trying to utilize the information for.
great. Thank you. Anyone else on a second? All right. We have a motion in a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously with all those present. Thank you, everybody. Good discussion. All right, so we're on to recognition and presentations. SB 1383, remaining fiscal year 22-23 edible food recovery funds awarded to Pajaro Valley Loaves and Fishes for the capacity building under 1383.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we'll have Kristen O'Hara, our manager for communications and education. We also have special guests in the audience, Mandy Brooks, who's a counterpart to Zoe Schultz out at Salinas Valley Recycles. This is a joint agency item that we'd like to collaborate together on and acknowledge together. So thank you for joining us today, Mandy. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks. Good morning, Amanda. Come on up, join me. Great.
Good morning.
Good morning. So today we're here to talk about the remaining funds for the fiscal year 22-23 edible food recovery grant. And we wanted to announce where the remaining awards were awarded to. As some background, we selected 5 organizations to receive awards. Our budget is $100,000 and we use approximately $76,000. So with all the administration fees deducted, we are left with $10,025. And we wanted to see those funds go to an organization that could really benefit within this fiscal year. And so we took a look at our applicants from the previous rounds, and we looked at specifically Pajaro Valley Loaves and Fishes. We considered all the storms that they've been through, all the number of individuals that have been impacted by the storms. And what we found was that there's a lot of new demand in Pajaro for edible food recovery. So we reached out to them, encouraged them to apply for the remaining funds. And in June, they submitted a proposal, and Salinas Valley Recycles, ReGen Monterey happily accepted. So we have this check today to present $10,025 funds to them. And they will actually be using this to increase their staffing because of the demand on their organization. So we're really pleased that they're extending their reach even further than before. And a lot of the reach is to, unfortunately, newer residents that haven't previously needed to rely on the pantry. So we were going to be joined today by the organization's president, but I think I told them maybe it'd be 10 o'clock. So my apologies. I thought the agenda would be later. But just join me in congratulating them on receiving these funds, and we'll take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much. Questions on loaves and fishes and not letting food go to waste, basically, is what we're, big part of 1383.
I'll make a comment. I just want to thank you. And I think your reasoning is really smart. I'm happy that you reached out to an organization where you saw a greater need, and that's where you're sort of pushing the money towards. I think that's honorable, and we need to be looking out for others in our communities. I appreciate you doing that.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else? All right, great. Yeah, thank you very much. That was
you.
good news and yeah, that's.
And we'll be back with our next round of edible food recovery funding, which is coming in fall.
Right around the corner.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Are we good on the audio visual in there? Because I'm used to seeing.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm just used to seeing a projection of what's going on in the.
oh, I can change it.
All right, moving on to discussion and action. Item 7, partial resurfacing of the material recovery facility tip floor. And the ask is to authorize the general manager to execute the contract with American Restore funding from Beach, California for materials recovery facility, the MRF. Tip floor concrete and asphalt repair in the amount of $1,660,000.
Thank you, Chair. Lead in for David is there is a two sections, one on the interior of the overhang, one on the exterior of the overhang. This is where the majority of our public drop off occurs. And since then, we've had a lot of impacts to that surface in that area where we have rebar exposed, which become a risk. We want to be able to address it. And David's going to talk about our plan to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. Morning, Director or Chair Campbell and members of the Board of Directors. This morning, if I can get this right down here. Pardon me while I do the Zoom shuffle here. All right, thank you for the introduction. And as Felipe mentioned, I'm going to be talking about the material recovery facility, which is this large building that's right outside our windows here. And we're going to be talking about a tip floor resurfacing. And this is a very important piece of infrastructure at the facility. Here. We'll start by talking about the floor that was installed originally at the MRF. And that floor is an 8-inch thick concrete slab that goes across the entire floor of the MRF. And MRF is the material recovery facility. That's our acronym that we call that building. It's an 8-inch thick slab of concrete, and it has steel rebar. So it's put in a hatched pattern, steel rebar, and that rebar is placed somewhat midway through the concrete slab before it's poured. And I think we're all familiar with the metal that gets put in there. It's really to give the concrete an additional strength for loads. And when they installed this concrete slab, they put in a Calman mono rock floor at the topping. So that was the wear surface. And that's what you put into a commercial building, which has moderate duty. However, we are seeing a very, very different use than a moderate duty floor would see. We are getting concrete dropped on it, big trucks driving on it, and material that gets pushed to the loading area of the MRF. So I thought we'd do a quick little virtual field trip here. This is the actual MRF tip floor. So if you've never been out there, it's organized, beautiful chaos out there. We have the loads that get dumped on the MRF floor. These are customers who come in. You can see this dump trailer that's letting the loads out. These stuff comes out of there pretty quick, hits the floor, and can cause increased load to the floor. And then we don't just pick it up and move it. We have a big loader come through and push that material out into the building so that it can get processed, loaded up the machine, and the material can get recycled. Well, all that wear has taken a toll on that floor. So remember I talked about the rebar being about midway through the concrete. Well, that concrete section above the rebar has been worn down from those trucks, moving the material from the loaders pushing their blade against the concrete surface, and that line you see there is the metal rebar. And that's not something you want to see on your tip floor or any structural slab that you've installed. So here's a couple of more examples. This one's a little harder to see on this screen, but there's some close-ups. There's that rebar. And what we're proposing to put in is actually a topping on that existing concrete surface. It's a UCO floor 404. It is a really high durable, high abrasive resistant flooring that is, if you look at the brochures, will last 5 times longer than concrete will for wear. If we get double the time we had for that concrete floor, that'll be really good. So we have probably almost 30 years of service that tip floor has been in use. And putting this UCO floor on here, I hope to never have to do this again. Primary applications, and if you look at that second bold, it's waste transfer station and tipping floors and industrial floors. I don't know for sure, but I don't think this product was available at the time in 1996 when they were installing the original tip floor, but it's really what this facility needs. It can handle C&D waste, construction and demolition debris waste, as well as municipal solid waste, which is very, very intense as far as abrasiveness, because it's wet, there's glass, and can be really abrasive. This is what we're proposing. And this is the area we're proposing it in. This is an aerial view of the material recovery facility. The yellow area is the external piece that we kind of saw that when we went on our field trip. On the left-hand side was pavement, asphalt pavement. We're planning to put in concrete on the exterior, about 50-foot apron, and then top that with this UCO floor. And that's that yellow piece you see there. The green piece is the interior of the MRF. So that is the C&D tip floor inside of the MRF that we'll be getting this UCO floor. We won't be pouring a new concrete slab. We'll be putting this topping right over the existing floor. And then what does that look like in the field? As I mentioned, that's the apron there, that red block. And that's about 7,000 square feet. And then the interior floor, there's some dimensions if you're into that. Cost, this fiscal year, we budgeted 1.35 million for the project. However, we have a project that came in at $1.66 million. We believe we can do some adjusting of our capital improvement budget to be able to work this in. It's such an important piece of our facility and something that the facility is in need of. It's a critical infrastructure for us. If we can't push material on the floor, we can't do business. So we can't get recycling. We can't make sure our employees have the tools they need to get the work done. So with that, I'm open for questions.
I just have 2 comments to add to it. David mentioned the life of the existing surface. It's been about 30 years. It hasn't really seen the intense output that it's seen until just recently, since the material recycling facility came in 2.0 and about 2017, it really started being aggressively used. So that 30-year period maybe has seen 6 or 7 years of intense operation and use, and it's already gone through deterioration. So just the push on a higher level epoxy that would give us a grander life of the project itself. The other item that I bring to your attention is the project itself originally started off at about 2.6 million. There is a piece that we did defer out of the project to try to fall in guideline with the existing budget and scramble for that additional money. So we did carve out a little piece and defer that out for a future project. Thank you, David.
Yeah, David, what's the thickness of the lift that you're gonna put down there?
It's an average 2 inches. but it's gonna be a floated floor, so it'll be all level. So if it needs to go thicker, 6 inches, they're gonna pour it, but on average, it's about 2 inches.
But where the concrete is currently worn, it'll be a thicker section.
Yeah, where you see the rebar, it's gonna be thicker in that area. It's gonna be floated all flush.
Is there an issue with the increased thickness relative to the equipment that is there, which is gonna be on the old floor? And
Yeah, that's a good question. It is gonna be a little higher, however, at the conforms, they're gonna taper it. So we'll have probably a 2-foot taper where it's gonna thin out. And those are in areas that we don't have a lot of traffic, and so they're not really high wear areas at those conforms.
what is this? If you said you refer to it as epoxy coating, is that a true epoxy? What is it made of?
So I can read here, it's a natural quartz, calcined and iron aggregates. It's an epoxy in it. I can get you that information of what this full sheet of what it is. I'll print it out for you, get it to you. You take a look, but I don't know the technical science behind exactly what's in there.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So it says it can be returned to high wear within 48 hours. So that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, it's really,
Do you have to clean everything out of there then?
Great
have them
question.
come in? So how much time do you think it will take? And what happens when it's not in, when you can't use it?
so our ops team is motivated to get this floor in. So we are gonna take measures outside of the building to be able to still receive customers. This will not impact customers at all. We'll still receive them. They'll just be dumping in a different area, and we'll stockpile the material while this work is going on. We've had many discussions with Jay's operations team, and they know it needs to go in. They want it. It impacts the way they drive, the way they push. If they're hitting these ruts and valleys in the floor, it really isn't ideal for them to be pushing that large of a loader over. So
Yeah, it seems there's a potential danger too, if some of this rebar gets.
absolutely, yes.
And,
Yeah, once
I'm
we,
sure some equipment or some person or whatever.
when we identified the rebar showing, we had to get something done.
Thank you. I like the PowerPoint. It really is helpful to see the parts. So thank you.
I'm glad, thank you.
Bruce.
You understand it when I say, whenever someone says, according to the brochures, it's got a, 5-time lifeline. So do you feel comfortable with our other customers that express satisfaction?
Yeah, this particular company, American Restore, does tip floors all over the country. And this is what people are putting in their floors, and it's lasting, it's holding up to the wear and tear. And as I mentioned before, MSW is the most abrasive, wet, juicy stuff that can get pushed on the floor. And this is the type of floor that we could be able to push MSW if and when that's the decision that gets made. But this floor will serve that purpose as well. So really confident in.
All right, is there any downside to the chemistry in it? Like if it gets wet or starts to, wear down and are there any components of it that are unsafe for workers to ingest or inhale?
Well, I think ingest probably, as far as eating it, but, that's,
I mean,
I don't mean to
smell it.
yeah, there's a material safety data sheet that goes along with this, which the contractor will be following the precautions required for installing the floor. I'm not aware that I highly doubt respirators are in that
No,
MSDS sheet. Yeah.
okay, that's good. So there's no nasty chemicals in this that will gas off or come off in some way to make it not good for people.
I can't say for sure. There are some, it is a chemical reaction, just like concrete that occurs. So I haven't looked into the exact safety precautions or like if it has PFAS in it. I haven't looked into that.
Usually the longer it lasts, the more durable it is, the nastier it is, to make it that that strong, that's why I was
Mhm.
curious.
Similar to Director Alaska, I can get you that information and make sure we cover all those bases, which we definitely want to make sure that it's safe for our employees to be around and even for the contractor putting it in.
All right, and last question, I'm curious what was deferred.
I can show you here on this here. Here we go. There, you see this line here? That is a row of concrete blocks that have been set up for customers to dump on either side of. And what the loader does, you can actually see some markings here, but customers will dump their loads along this area also. And then the loader will push it over into the building. So this is a push lane, we would call it a push lane. And that's the piece that is also getting worn down. It's asphalt pavement. And that area could use the similar treatment, but it's an expensive floor. And so we deferred that piece.
What would have been the added expense?
It would be probably another $750,000, 750,000 roughly.
All right, so deferred means sometime in the future, it'll be proposed to be done.
Something will have to be done for this whole footprint here. All this pavement's not a very good surface for doing this kind of work. So we are doing patches, we're fixing things along the way with pavement, and those are expensive, but we're not ready to invest in that full area.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so while that picture's up there, so the color palette's terrible, the more yellow of the green, the exterior part.
This part, yeah,
That is currently asphalt
that is currently asphalt, yeah.
and included in the contract is to excavate the asphalt and put concrete down and then cap it with this
Correct.
surface.
Yes,
So it says similar design, 6-8 inches of
yes,
concrete.
exactly, yeah.
And base and all that, okay, and then, the 2 inches, you say a float on top, so maybe it's self-leveling, and that's not an issue with like, you don't put a 2% slope in for sheeting rainwater off or anything like that?
Well, it will have drainage, positive drainage out of the building.
Okay.
But when we float it, it's just means it's all level. We don't have,
The top
we're not following the surface of the existing concrete floor and just getting 2 inches.
Okay.
You know, it's gonna be level and
Okay, I just know there's self-leveling products, and this is not one of them.
correct, yeah.
And then the taper, when you talk about the taper, just, you know, I can't believe that the new products at 2 inches tapering to 0 would actually hold.
No,
up at zero.
they put a keyway in, so what they'll
Okay,
do is
so
they'll
you
grind a thicker section at that
Okay,
at that conform, and that's what you get the thickness
so,
for.
okay, so you remove the existing material to keep the,
Right, to keep the thickness, exactly. Good question.
yeah. no, I
Glad
just-
you're thinking about it too.
All right, I just tried to understand, I know this is getting into the weeds, but, okay. Any other questions? Great, we have a motion on item 7. I'll move it through. All right, thank you, Leo.
I'll second.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, we have a first and second. Is there any public comment on item 7? Please approach the podium if you're in the chambers or raise your hand if you're online.
And then,
All right, thank you, Ida. Seeing no one, we will close public comment on item 7. We have a motion and a second to authorize the general manager to execute the contract with American Explorer of Huntington Beach, California for materials recovery facility, MRF, and concrete and asphalt repair in the amount of $1,660,000. Anyone on the second? We had good discussion on this. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously with all those present. All right, moving on. Thank you, David. Moving on to 8, Scale House and Public restroom improvement project bids. Consider rejecting the construction bids received from the 3 responsive public works contractors for the scale house and public restroom improvement project. The need bid, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On this item here, prior to my, arrival to the administration team, there was an item that was being prepared, and that was a renewal or uplift of the existing scale house. And that was really to try to create some worker space in that tight area. There is a set series that sits right in the middle of the bottom floor. So we really wanted to redesign it to meet the need at that time. When we received the bid results, they were roughly anywhere between 40 to 70% over our budget. And we don't believe that we would get the results that we wanted through this project with some other outlier items that exist, and that is the flow of traffic. The flow has been at times down Charlie Benson Road. And so we want to be able to try to administer some of those changes and see the future need that we will need in this project. So we don't think we would get that with the existing project, and it being well over bid really pushes us back to the design board. Do we get what we need to remedy traffic flow and also make the changes that are desired by our workforce in that small area? Since then, we've gotten a temporary building. It has 4 workstations over the 3 existing. We'd like to get that into play, really run some scenarios of additional windows, some trial scenarios with lane capacity and where those would exist, and come back and render back a better design that could meet some of those needs and also meet the needs of the workforce desiring more workspace capacity in their existing environment. Mr. David has a presentation as well, and will take us through that process. Thank you.
Thanks for the intro again, Felipe. We have another slide deck here to go over the scale house project and talk about the bid. If I can get this thing to work. Okay, thank you for your patience. Okay, so here's as Felipe laid out a preview of the recommendation. Before we get into everything, is that we're proposing to the board to reject the 3 bids that we received for this project. And then also come back to the board with a revised project that hits the district's or ReGen needs as far as our goals, the costs, and the value for the project. And I'll start off by going through the scope of work that the project that went out to bid incorporated. It was an 80 square foot expansion. Existing building remains intact, and we expand out 80 square feet. That sit there for a minute. So not a very big addition to the square footage in the building. It included an internal refresh, so new paint, new floors, there's a bathroom in there, new bathroom fixtures, etc. It also included handicap accessible, ADA accessible ramps for customers to go up the sidewalks and get to the service stations or service windows. And then there's also a remodel of an existing public bathroom that's kind of out in the front of the building here. That was the scope. Here is some drawings to show. This is the existing first floor of the scale house. You can see that you have a U shape, and these are the service windows. This is the vestibule where customers actually come in to this building, this little vestibule, and then get service through these windows here. The revised plan, this is the 80 square feet where you see these desks and chairs. That's the 80 square feet we're talking about. And then there was a small office, very, very small office that we were getting in here, squeezing in there. And then there was, instead of a internal vestibule, we were going to put an overhang, just a roof over that customer service window area. And here is the second floor. So the second floor has some record keeping file cabinets, some IT equipment, HVAC equipment, and back when we did not have cameras at the scale house, there's some viewing platforms. These are actually decks. So the scale attendant would go up these stairs, go on this deck on the second floor, and then look down into the load to see if there's anything of concern in there. So that's some legacy stuff that we don't really have a need for anymore. So the plan was to get rid of those stairs and then make this more of a usable space, cordon off the IT equipment, and then put some external stairs out here so that this could be usable space. We did go out to a construction cost estimator, a contractor, back in April of last year. And we got the scope of work estimated, and that estimate came back at around $900,000. However, when we went out to bid in June, these are the bids we got back. So we had 3 bidders: DMC Commercial, Asunio, and Selden and Sons. And these are their bids. Lowest bid was $1.2 million, which is a 41% increase over budget. And they range from 41% to 71% over budget. Was not the results we wanted to hear. Yeah, there you go. Potential contributing factors, or where we know that there's a lot of work going on in the area. Contractors and subcontractors are very busy, and so bringing them in to do this work, they may have charged a premium. Like, we'll do the work if we can get this job. Also, there's inflation, which we're all experiencing. Construction is no different than what we're all experiencing. We also have a unique site in that we have to keep this facility running. The contractor would be working in between scales with vehicles coming in. So it's a constrained work environment that could contribute to it as well. It's kind of the same thing. So just the fact that it's small and that we have the scales, those are two items. There was significant electrical work. We had to go through the building floor, and there's an existing slab there. That was somewhat significant. The ReGen has to pay prevailing wages as being a public entity. We're required to follow public works construction laws, which increase our costs compared to the private builder. So let me go back one tick. So it could be a combination of all these different items all happening at the same time, which may be why we got a different number than we expected. And part of the reason we're proposing to reject this bid and come back to the board with a project that meets our needs is because our business has changed from when this project was conceptualized. There's some new conditions that weren't present at the time that this project was developed. Our original, such as increased traffic. So we've seen I'm jumping ahead, but we've seen a big increase as of probably October of last year. Salinas Valley, there was a facility in Salinas that shut down, and folks are now coming here instead. So we've seen a large uptick. What used to be our average was 700 vehicles a day, roughly. Now we're up to 800 to 1,000 vehicles a day, which has really increased the throughput that scale house has had to accommodate. So original goals were improve employee workspaces. It was pretty crammed in that scale house, and we wanted to give them some more space. We want to improve building security, improve the bathroom and public restroom space, improve the customer safety and accessibility with the ADA improvements. And the additional goals now today that are the change conditions are that we want to increase the throughput of that facility so that we're able to process more customers than we currently are. So here's staff's recommendation again, to reject the 3 bids and allow staff to come back to the board with a revised project scope that meets the value needs of the district and also hits the goals that we see today out there on the scale. So with that, I'll take any questions.
I have a question. Thank you, David, for this
Sure.
presentation. I always like your slide decks.
Thanks.
What's the timeline for this, that you would be able to come back with something?
We have a short list of projects that we have in mind of improving on a temporary basis. And then on a long-term basis, we need to talk about how some long-term projects can get implemented and what does the budget look like for that? Is this the same budget? Are we in a new framework as far as developing the project? But there are, as Felipe mentioned, some temporary steps that we can take in the interim to be able to increase the space available for employees and also add additional windows that we're already in the works of performing.
So you use this current budget for those temporary fixes to what's out there now, and then maybe come back. I mean, are we looking at another year, the next fiscal year, you'd come back with a larger project?
It really depends on the discussions we have as far as how wide the project could go. There's a lot of options. And so we've narrowed it down to, okay, what do we need now? And what can we implement quickly? Because the line out there is something that we all recognize as something that needs to get fixed. And so there are steps we can take in the interim and then get a more polished, finished product together. And I think we're thinking of preparing that scope in the next few months, having that scope put together, and then we can really come back to you. This is the scope and this is the timeline for project delivery for that larger piece.
I'm a little uneasy about this, probably because I'm ignorant. Your staff knows a tremendous amount more than I do about your operations day to day. But I really like these goals that were original. And I don't like, delaying progress on them. Because it sounds like you had a great project, even though it was still going to be somewhat constrained in space, it was going to be better. And so what I'm hearing is that a bigger project would get us further down the road. And so we don't want to piecemeal in something now, given especially since the cost estimates are high. But I suppose in the future, the cost estimates are going to be even higher. And so my main question is, how integral is the offsite improvements that need to happen, lane approach and the stuff that Felipe mentioned that has to happen outside of this project? How integral is that we couldn't do what's envisioned here now and do those additional projects that increase or decrease transaction time? Can it be a 1-2 phase, or is it really more intelligent to do it all at once to get it right? Because I'd rather not wait on this stuff if it's not so integral to the additional project.
And I'll, through the chair, I'll take my best approach at the question. I think we could do it in phases, but I don't believe that we would address the grander scale of items that. So we could move ahead with the project, but we would come back shortly after to say we need to still do something else. This would allow us to look at a couple of options. One is going from a 3 attendant system to a 4 or 5 attendant system with the temporary items we could put in play. The other item that we're looking at is, you didn't notice on your way in, there is some trees removed as you approach the 4-way intersection. We're going to expand the right-hand turn that would take customers headed to Monterey One Water, to Key Day, to Chapin. Earlier on, they were able to move out of the line, get to the right. So we need to know what that impact is. We also have a 4-way project at that intersection to re-sign, restripe, reline, but it's still a project that's still a couple of months away. And as to David's point is, we know it exists today. And how do we layer that into a permanent solution? We're gonna have to pull levers on trying what's gonna be effective in that line. We've also heard adding an additional scale. And what, you know, how do we put that in? Would it be in the traditional scale setup we have today? We've also heard implementation of another non-scale line and looking at processes that we can push traffic that would be meet the minimum requirement. With all these items still haven't been tested or approved, it's difficult to say, let's push forward this design and accept whatever the result is, knowing that you have existing problems. And I appreciate your acknowledgement that we really want to take care of our folks today. But prior to this discussion, I've independently gone and meet with the entire workforce to show acknowledgement around the existing problem. One, we're aware of it. Two, here's all the things we can try. And I would hate to build something, have to knock it down and rebuild it again because we didn't consider those other items that can improve that process of flow. We also have the wayfinding project that's coming where it's going to implement all the new signs and help us get around the facility much easier. We've seen the preliminary scope of that project. We won't finalize it until December, but the problem exists today. So how do we implement some of these temporary solutions that will overlay and be a final design that we could look at that would fulfill current business and growth for future business if that was desired in the future? I don't believe this design would give it to us.
Okay, David listed or mentioned that there were there's a list of short-term projects that will happen anyway if this is delayed. And you just mentioned that concept. And so my question is, how much of the short-term stuff that's going to happen in the next year would have to be redone or undone once this larger project goes in?
Probably none of it. We're gonna move into a temporary building and we can identify what those changes are and utilize the temporary building and give us results of what that permanent one could look like. But I don't think it'll happen one right after the other. We have to get some results to make the decision on what is gonna be needed for the future design.
So you mean the current scale building won't be used? There'll be a different location?
Yeah, you see a temporary building that's sitting out there right now.
No, I didn't.
That one has 4 workstations in it, so it'll give us an availability to see what an additional workstation would do for us. And then we can put into play whether we wanted a non-scale line to exist and how we incorporate that. So yes, we do have some plans to move folks out of the existing building into a temporary and get some results, and then we can figure out, is the existing gonna be part of the final design? Or do we go even further and knock it down and create something that would be a permanent solution that we don't have to retrofit at such an expense, because we believe we can do it better than what's existing in front of us today.
Okay, thank you both.
Yeah.
Check, thank you.
I have a question. When you plan a project like this, I'm sure there must be various steps where you observe what's going on, you make notes. Do you ask the employees that are actually working in those areas?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's really important because sometimes the people who are actually dealing with it every day have ideas that might be there. So I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, and I think like to Leo's question is, why, what's changed? When I started 18 months ago, a good, a blowout day was 700 customers, 600 to 700 customers. Now we have 800 to 900 on a really, really good day. And on a day of before a holiday or a day after the holiday, we have over 1,000 customers. And that didn't exist when everybody was looking at what that should look like. Maybe not even the scale house attendants knew that it existed. Until just recently, as my challenge was, how do we go and get more business or more customers, bring more customers with compost and recycling in, the Z-Wall customers. We can't do any of that if we don't fix that issue. So there's a lot of other issues that lay around it that we need to get these inputs that are going to bring value for that future one to expand it if we ever needed to, and have the ability to pull it. And so I asked, what are we gonna do after the holidays? to reduce line? And how do we take that information to figure out a longer vision of that? So expansion of the road, maybe adding another scale to the right-hand side, where that lives. Is it there? Is it down at the bottom? So we really beat this one up. You know, we're not happy that we have to come back and reject the bid. We would love to move it forward. I think everybody from the workforce through the executive team really believe that we can really get a better result of what we're anticipating and better usage of our money at the same time. Thank you for the questions.
Well, along the same lines, I'm a little more critical. I hate the feeling of a whole lot of nothing getting done. And you know, it seems to be happening in a lot of different places. These are perfectly rational reasons to not move forward with this project, not just the cost, but that we're already outgrowing these plants. I see that. But I remember when those public restrooms were open and I used them and they should have been closed. They were terrible. And eventually they got closed and porta potties were put out there. I don't see the restrooms on these drawings here. I don't understand why we can't pull specific projects out and pursue them so that something's getting done. I mean, the restroom situation is embarrassing and has been embarrassing for, I don't know how many years now, and just, you know, 10 years basically or more. And it seems completely or almost entirely separate from the scale house. So I just really would like it if we take a look at, you know, delays with the medium voltage line. I get it, but why aren't we like putting the conduits in? Why aren't we putting the pads? Why are we not seeing anything done, you know, where we know we can move forward and be ready for when that equipment arrives or whatever? So anyway, if you could please.
Yeah, your point is well taken. And when you have a project like this that comes in this kind of price tag and you take a look at the value, I'm like speaking as an engineer, you do some introspection and you say like, what did we miss along the way? How did we get here? Because you never want a project to come in this far over budget. So it's definitely in the scope of the look we're doing now, looking at what pieces can be pulled off and be their own project. For instance, the bathroom, it could be pulled off. The reason we had it connected with the scale house is there's a certain amount of ADA improvements that you need to do when you do a project. You need to spend so much, at least 25% of your project going towards ADA improvements. And so we had that bathroom. We're like, hey, that's where we're gonna get our credit. But it is something that we can discuss as far as what can go now, what can get peeled off. And what's temporary, and then what does the final look like? So your points are well taken, and those sentiments are shared within the organization. So thank you for bringing them up as well.
No, it's not a question, but we've had quite a bit of discussion. Thank you, David, for the presentation. And you know, I can't speak to the urgency of this project or the aspects of this project, but what struck me was that your ability to adjust to new data that came in and a new environment and to make adjustment in direction. And I've worked in organizations where it's very hard to pivot. And it's like the project gets conceptualized, and then, you know, no matter what, we're headed in that direction. And so I thought this, your ability to pivot, I'll call it, is impressive and speaks to the organization. Thank you.
Thank you. And it looks like the ask here is to consider rejecting the construction bids received from the 3 responsive public works contractors for the scale house and public restroom improvement plan. Is there any public comment on this item? I'm opening it up. Please approach the podium or raise your hands.
Let me get out of here. All right, let me get out of here.
Okay, seeing no one online, raising hands, no one in the chamber is approaching, we'll close public comment on item 8. Is there any further discussion or?
I have a question. So the agenda item is just rejecting the bids. The staff recommendation is to reject the bids and direct the staff to bring back an alternate project approach. Can you do those two things on this one agenda item?
I believe, yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that would be a,
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be.
So thanks, that helps me, what you just did, Kim. I'm wondering if we could have a motion that's something like reject the bids, but have staff come back ASAP on the public restrooms. Sort of disregarding for now the ADA 25% credit we were gonna get by combining the restrooms with this other project. So thinking about the restrooms, it's more important than the ADA credit and hoping that the bigger project, when it comes back, will have room for the ADA credit. So, yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
if I may, I feel like the message has been sent, and I think staff understands our concerns here. I mean, if we want to move forward, so I feel like the more simple the motion, the better. Just, just come back with a project, and I think they as soon as possible, and divide it up as reasonably. I think that's the message.
I appreciate it. I am equally, I'm not upset about it, but I am, concerned what impact it does to the employee morale, everybody watching it, everybody sees it, everybody's impacted. Thus, the importance for us to deliver the message. We see it happening. Here's everything we've got to try to get the better result. For the scale masters that we have, was something that we're looking forward for maybe like a 2-year period. So deliver that message was not easy, but I think it was appropriate. And I think we've already demonstrated our organization is now starting to have more difficult conversations so that we can be world-class. This is one of them. This is saying, hey, let's make the right decision. Although we knew how important it is, we don't want this to linger on any longer than it needs to. I want to resolve. We're gonna work really hard at trial and error, get it right, measure twice, cut once, and come back with the best result for this board. So I appreciate everybody's effort around it. I am not happy that we're not moving ahead with the project, but I am happy that we're looking for the best result of a project. So thank you.
So sure, I'll move that we reject these bids and direct the staff to bring back an alternate project approach that meets our needs.
All right, thank you, Kim. Thank you. Jerry, any further discussion from the? Okay, great. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you. It passes unanimously with all those present. Thank you for the discussion. That was a very good. All right, so item 9, we moved to after a closed session. And we'll move on to staff reports, review of finance and operating and recycling reports.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have our finance manager going to give us our overview of our finances for the last one.
Good morning, board members. We have just finished the fiscal 23 year and things are generally looking pretty good. Our revenue for the year was just under $50 million at 49.6. We were about $1.3 million over budget, and we were about $4 million higher than fiscal 22. The big increase was in the tip fee revenue, which was up about 6.8 million. Power revenue did extremely well this year. We were up 700 over last year, and we were $1 million over our budget for this year. So the power crew people were doing a fantastic job all year, keeping our power generation going. Where we took the big hit was in the MRF activities. We were about 3.5 million less than last year, and we were about 2.7 under budget. Breaking down the MRF revenue a little bit, our total MRF revenue is about 9.8 million. And a little over 4 million of that is the money we get from the state for CRV revenue. And then there's a smaller portion of that is made up of the processing fees that we charge to process the single stream material at the MRF. And then the remainder is the sales of the material that come out of the MRF. And as we know, the commodity prices have been very low in the past 12 months and longer, actually. And that's why we're seeing the big decrease from last year and our shortage against our budgeted revenue number. And so we'll see what happens going forward. So say total revenue about $50 million this year. Our total operating expenses this year were about $40 million, which is about 2.8 million over budget. A variety of factors in there. Our employment costs were slightly over budget, but a big chunk of the overspend there was in our recycling costs, and that has to do with the material that's processed by Keith Day. So that's all the green waste and food waste material that's being processed by him. Bottom line for the year, our net income was about 11.4 million, and we were about $1.5 million over budget. And we were actually about $125,000 less than fiscal 22. But overall, from a revenue and expense standpoint, it was a pretty good year. In terms of our tonnage activity, we received just over 1 million tons of material in fiscal 23, which was about 135,000 tons higher than fiscal 22. MRF diverted about 74,000 tons this year, compared to about 71,000 last year. And our MRF diversion percentage for fiscal 23 was 60% compared to 63.4% for fiscal 22. So overall, fiscal 23 was a pretty good year, and we'll hopefully keep it going in fiscal 24. Any questions? I'll be glad to take them.
Thanks, Garth. You mentioned that there was a drop in MRF sale proceeds due to commodity prices.
Right.
Is that stuff going to last chance, or is that going to recycling markets?
That's the stuff that's going to the recycling market. That's like the bulk, the plastic that we bale up and sale, and the cardboard and the aluminum, those type of materials.
Okay. The staff have a reason they think diversion is down 3% from 63 to 60.
I don't know if there's a specific reason for that. You know, we don't really have a lot of control over what comes in here. It's whatever people bring in, and, you know, we process it, and what comes out is, in terms of diverted material, it kind of, you know, it is what it is. And maybe some of it has to do with the material that's coming in from some of the newer customers that we have. As Felipe mentioned, the customers that were going to Salinas previously are now coming here. And so perhaps, and probably, the quality of some of the C&D material is not as good as it was previously before that. The single stream material has remained fairly confident. It does have a higher diversion percentage than the C&D. The C&D is the one that's been kind of low and has been kind of almost trending downward in the past 12 months or so.
Is there a one-to-one relationship between the organics coming out of those new bins going to Keith Day and the increase in diversion rates at our MRF, or are they not related?
Well, they're related. I don't know if it's a direct one-to-one relationship, but there is some impact there.
So if I send a pound of organics to Keith Day, is the diversion rate a pound better at the MRF?
Well, actually, the stuff that goes to Keith Day, you know, that's sort of a separate area. You know, the diversion rates I talk about, that's what comes out of the MRF. And so the Keith Day process material, that doesn't go through the MRF. That's just material that goes to him. And effectively, it's considered almost 100% diverted, because everything that goes to him he does something with it and, to the most part, he's turning it into compost. And, so all of that material is getting essentially diverted.
Okay,
But the other, the diversion I talk about is like when we send a load of single stream material to the MRF and it gets all separated out, we got the good stuff, the cardboard, the plastic, and then we have a certain amount of stuff that ends up going to the landfill.
okay, so those organics going to Keith Day were never diverted. They just went to the landfill in the past. If they ended up on the MRF floor in the yesteryear, instead of going to Keith Day, they would end up in the landfill?
Well, no, we, before Keith Day, we used to do a lot of processing ourselves on site.
Of the organic.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we had our own grinding equipment and we would process it on site ourselves.
Okay, so now that the organics are diverted before they come to the MRF, it's harder for us to reduce our diversion rate. Because what used to be organics that we would take out and get credit for diverting are now getting to Keith before they come to us. So now we have to get a higher diversion rate from lower opportunity, because some of the opportunity to divert is now first goes to Keith Day. We don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment, yes,
Okay.
because what we again we look at the material that flows through the MRF, which
Right.
is essentially the C&D material and the single stream material.
But it used to include organics, so now it's harder for us to divert because we don't have something that we used to
Well,
divert.
that material actually was never included because it didn't go through the MRF. If you look at our total numbers.
I'll help a little bit with clarification. So Bruce, we'd like to have the majority of the streams independently ratioed up for diversion. So like Art said, everything that comes across the sale and goes to Keith Day is essentially diverted except for his residual. So whatever he's doing to clean up, I found 100 bags, or I found things that were not composting accordingly. He's gonna pull that out. That's gonna wind up going to the landfill at some point. So I would say he's definitely in the high 90s. So you're gonna ask for diversion based on a commodity type rather than a diversion for the whole facility, because it just becomes very condescending on where exactly is the game. So we look at the streams independently. When we look at the MRF, we want to look at single stream independent of C&D. Garth is kind of merging them together, but we do see a track to isolate them so we can see where we're at exactly. So if it's single stream, it should only be the representation of single stream and what that diversion is. The problem with our MRF is the C&D goes and gets processed through there, so they're trying to categorize two items together. They probably better done separately. C&D also comes in, and sometimes it's coded as C&D, and it's not C&D, it's trash. So we got to do a better job of categorizing it, and I think we have been, just seeing the slight increase in that ratio of what is our number, our diversion number. And as we continue to harness those, we may see that kind of just go up and down, but we're really trying to do a better job of the diversion number represents what we do. And in the past, it was a global number that may not have directly represented every single stream.
But it's the global number, that's the only number that the state cares about, but that 75% goal.
Is not a global number that they're looking for. They're looking for the number of throughputs by municipality. So they're looking at the municipality owning the goal. We try to push and influence it. Municipality needs to meet it. So when we gauge it, the diversion number, it'll be marina tons that come in, and we only look at marina. We're not looking at everybody together.
But it's a global marina number, not a C&D marina number, and not a
MSW, they're really looking at an MSW number for that diversion. So when we speak diversion, we gotta be very specific about it, because it could come with other aspects of what we're considering should be diverted, but maybe doesn't sit in that silo for that type of material. So we really want to look at our diversion numbers to be material by that material type, and not just looking at everything all together, because it'll get very confusing. Thank you.
Sorry, not to be this, but but we do have a responsibility for a certain amount of
Yes.
diversion, right? And what is that number?
The goal is 75,
The goal is 75, but that's separate from 1383. Because,
separate of it, 13, AB 939.
okay, so 75% of all those materials, or is this,
Yes, over
Solid
the,
waste.
so solid waste, would be your number.
Okay,
And then all the materials that are diverted would be your opposite number. You're dividing one into the other. It's a simple
Okay.
math calculation. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Maybe a little fact sheet on diversion, because as you very well quickly point out, you can calculate a diversion based on many different streams.
We'll work on it.
Yeah, I agree, it's very, very confusing with the staff, but it doesn't seem fair that the better the marina resident does separating their trash out at the source, it sounds like the worse the diversion rate looks when it gets here, because it's, or at least it's gonna be harder to divert if we're not counting the green waste, separately as part of the diversion. So it is very complicated and, at first I thought, oh, just everything that we total, everything that comes across the scale and see what we send there anywhere but the landfill and call that the diversion rate. That was my original take. And then I find out, no, we're accepting material from the San Jose area, which has already been recycled. So it's going to be 100% landfill. Is that going to work against our overall average? So you have to pull that out and then it starts getting very complicated from there. And if you can come up with a simple chart to explain it, that'll be.
Okay, I can put something together for you.
And Kristen does the reporting already for the municipalities on what is their diversion number. So I think rather than using a global number, it may be better specified for the member agencies of what their diversion number is, because that's really where you want to focus. Where you want to focus there.
Oh, BPG.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking about that comment. I guess, so if some contractor comes in and with, say, C and D from anywhere, that's not even gonna be counted for a member diversion rate, right?
It would not.
No.
And then diversion rate for the MERV, that doesn't, we don't have a goal for that. It doesn't count towards our state metrics.
Sure
right?
doesn't, it sure doesn't, but our goal is to maximize and improve, right? And so when you see this, the tilt backward, you're trying to figure out what is driving that and why and how come. But the way the calculation has been done and the leadership has talked about it is, what does it represent when we say that in our meeting for every jurisdiction? And it doesn't really directly tie to Valley Oaks or Sand City. So maybe we need to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, this is that diversion for every member agency. Whether it's annually when we do the report, or how do we track that more closely independently? But I think the goal that it exists here today is then a representation of all the outputs that are going just through the MRF, but it doesn't include the trash at the top. It doesn't include the compost facility, any of those attributes as well. It's a good discussion because there needs to be more clarity on when you talk about a diversion number, what do you want to reference? Do you want to reference your city diversion number? The single stream number that comes in through the whole facility, and that means the whole gamut. That means anybody that brings it in, from the public to the municipality. And when you represent diversion, you probably want to use your municipality number rather than just a global number, because I think depending what hat you're wearing on, it'll be very important on how you depict your diversion. Thank you. Is Zoe any comments on diversion?
Actually, I did. I was thinking I would hold them to my tech presentation if there was a component, but since you called on me. The electronic annual reports, they're called the EARs, if you will, that Kristen specifically prepares on behalf of our member jurisdictions are due August 1st for the last calendar year, so for 2022. So I urge you all that have interest in your topic for your city to reach out to your staff member directly. Kristen will submit those and they'll have city signatures. We work with the haulers to obtain this information, with Garth in accounting to make sure all the tonnages are matching up, and then also with the jurisdictions to find out what they're doing within their city and compile that all into one report and submit to Cal Recycle. So there's a lot of great data in there, and I urge you to look into that after August 1st with your city staff.
Is this new?
No, this is something that we do on an annual basis. And we prepared 8 of the 9 member jurisdictions. The only jurisdiction that we do not prepare the reports for is the County of Monterey, and that's because they're split between Salinas Valley Recycles and ReGen in terms of their service area. So they prepare their own reports with our assistance.
Thank you, Bart.
It's always so much to learn. Yes. Right, so moving on to the tech committee report.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, we have Zoe Schultz, our Director of Communications.
Thank you, Felipe. Thank you, Chair, members of the board. I'll give an update on our technical advisory committee meeting that was held on June 14th. The first item we discussed was SB 1383 enforcement requirements. As of January 2024, there's going to be a big push for enforcement. As you know, there was a 2-year educational period that was built into SB 1383. The infrastructure was supposed to be in place, and we met that goal as of January 1st, 2022. And from 2022 to 2024, we've been out there, the haulers, the jurisdictions, and ourselves have been out there educating the public about how to participate in food scrap composting. As of January 2024, enforcement's required. This is the one aspect of the law that is required to be performed directly by the jurisdiction. It cannot be handled by ReGen. It cannot be handled by the hauler. So we were asked to put together a summary of what those enforcement requirements are for the jurisdictions. I've outlined that in some bullet points. Enforcement response to violations found during inspections. Creating procedure for receipt and investigation of written complaints of alleged violations, issuance of notices of violations for non-compliance, adopting ordinances for or enforceable mechanisms for civil penalties, and prescribing penalty amounts for violators. So essentially what this relates to is the fact that all multifamily and commercial properties need to have a green cart at their location. That is the enforceable mechanism that CalRecycle prescribes. They don't prescribe how it's used, but they do prescribe that it's there and available for the tenants to use. So the haulers are working directly with the jurisdictions to ensure that we are meeting 100%, or that you all are meeting 100% compliance on making sure that we have those carts at those commercial properties and at those multifamily locations. Item number 2, Mallory with the City of Monterey was kind enough to walk us through the entire TAC, the enforcement and education actually ahead of enforcement to some of those generators. So she gave a real live example of the work that she's been doing outreach to these generators, talking to them about their requirements under the law, providing the technical assistance one-on-one. So that was available to all the jurisdictions, so they could take what aspects of that they were interested in and apply those directly. And this is the time to act, because we want to be approaching this with an educational component, and that, now's the time, get set up before January 1st when penalties may be assessed. Any questions on that before I move forward? Because that's kind of a lot.
Yes. Back to number 1, your
Yes.
first bullet point, enforcement in response to violations found during inspections. Can you clarify what is the jurisdiction doing inspections, or is it just like lid flipping that we do throughout the year?
This is not the lid flipping
So
requirement.
This is just commercial.
This is-
So we're expecting the city to be contacting to doing inspections with all of our businesses to make sure that they have green lights.
A green card, correct.
Okay.
And we have a database that is maintained. It's called Recyclist. It's maintained by ReGen, by the haulers and the jurisdictions as well. Everyone has access to that information that shows what services each business, each single family resident, each multifamily property has, how they have subscribed to the services that are available. So ensuring that each one of those multifamily and commercial properties do indeed have that green card is what we're looking for here.
Okay. And then I know in this meeting, CalRecycle was there and they mentioned coming to the jurisdictions in July. I'm
Yes.
wondering if that's is that still the timeline? Should we expect them to visit?
We have not heard back from them to schedule. Usually they don't give us a lot of notice. But we are on standby and realize that their visits will be coming soon.
Okay, and that's just to check in, like, to say, hey, have you been on the road to making sure that your commercial businesses have green waste? I mean, because they're not looking for things that you haven't done yet, but they're just wanting to
Correct.
make sure that you're on the road to doing those things.
Correct. They'll like to see some live examples and they will be toured generally by the hauler and the jurisdiction to specific businesses, either ones that they've had fantastic successes with or ones that they need a little bit more push. And kind of giving that technical assistance and showing Cal Recycle the implementation that's happened in the field.
Okay.
Yeah. The electronic annual report that I spoke of is really where the rubber meets the road in terms of if the jurisdictions are meeting those targets per SB 1383, AB 939, all the laws that relate to waste for the jurisdictions.
So that report that we can ask the staff for, that will tell us what percentage of our commercial have green waste.
Yes.
Okay.
That said, this report is for 2022.
Oh, right.
So it's,
Okay.
we file in August for the whole calendar year prior. So the 2024 report, which will be due in August 2025, will be the one where they want to see 100% compliance.
Okay.
And they may ask for some intermediate reports. They've done that once related to SB 1383 specifically. So that's up to them.
I just want to comment that we do have one of the member agencies already working on this item here. Kudos to Marina. Marina is really looking at how they work with green waste recoveries. We did bring this item to the tech committee and Mike and Ted, and we all put our heads together as how are we going to utilize Marina's scenario and cascade that over to the other cities. So you're getting support not only from your direct staff, but other staff members that are involved in the process that are doing things that could demonstrate to Cal Recycle that we're meeting these obligations. What did we do? How do we track that? And what are the impacts to the composter, which is key day. So we are even analyzing, the material, and is this going to add more to contaminants, or is this going to improve what we're doing? And the messaging that we're sending is going to be very important at the same time. So we're starting to work through that, and we're starting to see is what is going to be effective with the first person in line to make it happen, and then really passing those results on so that there's improvement along with that for every municipality or member agency that's involved in our tech committee. Thank you.
Thanks.
Quick question. Do you expect to see a significant increase in waivers requested once the property owners start to realize that it's serious, they have to have a bin or a waiver?
I can't speak too directly on that because that doesn't happen through ReGen. It happens directly at your staff with the staff in your city. I would suspect that the waivers will probably start to be requested more often now that it's going to become mandatory. And it's up to city staff to determine if those waivers should be validated or not. The two different types of waivers, as you may recall, are de minimis, having a de minimis amount of organics that would qualify for even having a green bin. And the second one is a space constraint. And it will be up to the jurisdictions to decide, how loose or tight they want to be with issuance of those waivers. And it can be done on a case-by-case basis.
So if UPS says, hey, we've got 3 employees a day that eat lunch here, we don't need a bin. The city will say, no, we still want you to have a bin. Or the city could say, okay, we agree, you don't need a bin.
Exactly.
It's completely up to the discretion of the city.
Exactly.
It sure would be nice if the cities had some discussions between them so that they were, consistent across the cities.
Mm-hmm.
Has that discussion happened at any group collective level?
I believe there may be some guidance in the law as to what the definition of de minimis is. So we can look at that more closely. We're just kind of dipping our toe into the enforcement aspect of this. And this was at our last June meeting. So there's more work to be done amongst all of us. And in anywhere we can collaborate and share resources and approaches, we definitely are. We don't want these programs to be built 9 times over.
Seems like maybe the General Managers Association, that'd be a good topic for their agenda. To consistent,
And I think it's gonna exist and live in the TAC committee so that the staff has an opportunity to weigh in on it, but I think from there, it carries over into policymaker and policy decision of the city's acknowledging, do we want to take a strong approach? Do we want to take a loose approach? And can we be consistent with that approach would be very important. I would.
Yeah, I'm beating that drum, that consistency drum nonstop here in Delgado. It benefits all of us, but there are sometimes some circumstances that would warrant maybe a jurisdiction taking a different approach, maybe depending on how things are hauled, who's hauling them, specific things within the city themselves. And so we're trying to also be flexible.
Number of cars per unit.
Yeah,
Parking is a premium in the seaside, and part of the reason is the actual number of cars that are owned by people. So it'd be, I think, all under different
yeah.
categories.
Carmel, I think, has already allowed 14 waivers at the last count I saw. And part of that is the space constraint because we don't have alleyways downtown. And so they're little, almost like cupboards where they put their garbage and so on. And I wonder if there shouldn't also maybe be discussed at TAC best management practices for how you order, what you order, a little bit of education, because I know big Cisco trucks come in to town and unload untold number of cardboard box food and so on. And then, before just handing out waivers all over the place, which dilutes the whole program, actually doing education about how to better manage the volume of waste that you have at restaurants particularly would be helpful.
Yeah, it's a little outside the scope of this project. I do agree that it starts, with reduction first. And I think that's part of our education that we need to provide is a reduction approach first and then recovery. There's certainly as it relates to food, there's recovery efforts and that's built into the law. Some of those timelines for smaller businesses don't apply until later in this legislative timeline, if you will. Yeah, great comments. Seeing no other questions on items 1 and 2, I'll move on to numbers. Oh, excuse me.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for the report as usual.
Well, we're not quite finished yet, though.
We're on item number 3 now, if we're gonna continue.
Okay.
Would you know offhand, what is the state penalty for municipalities not complying?
With SB 1383, I believe it's $10,000 a day. Yeah.
And the head of Cal Recycle would be determining or assessing compliance or not.
Correct.
Okay, 10,000.
And that's all aspects of the law, so not just specifically the green cart, but there's edible food recovery, capacity building. It's quite an elaborate law, all the lid flipping that we're doing, education, so. We're, as a region, we are tracking very well. And this is part of the reason why we invite Cal Recycle to attend our TAC meetings, is we like them to hear on a regular basis the efforts that we're making in case there are any red flags from their side, so that they can see the efforts that we're making. But we've been to quite a few conferences and been showcased at some of those conferences as to our efforts that we're making here, and largely because of the infrastructure that we had in place prior to 1383's implementation with a compost yard, and it's specifically acceptance of food waste through that compost yard and some of the learnings there. We were already ahead before implementation began, ahead of some other areas in the state.
Good.
Yes.
With my comment, I expect that we would all know well in advance before a fine would land at any of our member agencies. With a $10,000 fine, I think we would be well acknowledged and well informed that it is coming if we don't do X, I think we would have great awareness around any penalties coming to any of our member agencies at this time.
They do issue a notice of violation and allow a timeline for correction, and they hold meetings to resolve those issues. And ask for action steps to be completed before those violations happen. So we would be involved and ask the jurisdictions if we could actually sit in those meetings to assist. But generally CalRecycle would reach out to the jurisdiction directly for those. Hopefully we don't get there. Mike, do you have your hand up at this moment? Thank you, Felipe.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little something about the regulatory component of it. I mean, that's why these EAR reports are so important. Is basically what it is we're checking in with CalRecycle and saying, this is what we're doing. Is this enough, or do we need to do more? And so if you would know, staff is going to know years before there's a fine. These fines typically never really get used unless you're violently. It's probably mostly for. In my history on these things is it's when somebody refuses to do anything, refuses to do any program at all. Generally, they're much more interested in using a carrot than a stick. You know, we need to have the stick to make sure everybody participates. But that's why these EAR reports are so important, because there's staff from ReGen, there's staff from the jurisdictions and staff from Recycle, and we all agree that we're on the right track. And they tell us, okay, maybe you need to do this or this to stay on track. And so there's the fine is just there to make sure we participate. But I think CalRecycle has been pretty reasonable on this, and we're doing much more than a lot of other jurisdictions that have to start whole composting operations up from nothing. And so I think that as long as we're showing progress, we don't have any issues, and that's the beauty of this of all the jurisdictions working together. And I know Mayor Delgado mentioned about the city managers group, and that's we only usually need to bring the city managers in if there's some big issue involved. I think the last time they had to get together on this kind of an issue was when we were going through the franchise agreements. And so that's why we're all working together. We're trying to be all on the same page. So I think that one of the issues is everybody has a different idea of what they think the law says is required. And the only voice that matters is the CalRecycle staff. And so we're making sure we satisfy them. That helps.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. Item number 3 was the discussion of the CalRecycle electronic annual report. We were just giving the jurisdiction staff heads up that we needed information from them to help complete the report on their behalf, notifying them of that. Talked about that a little bit already, so we'll move on. Item number 4, ReGen and Salinas Valley Recycles came together to hold 2 virtual workshops on June 13th and 22nd. For property managers of multifamily dwellings. This is an area where more education is needed. Single family dwellings have probably adopted having a green cart at their location at a much faster rate than multifamily dwellings. There's a couple reasons for that, but we wanted to give multifamily dwellings property managers and owners an opportunity to ask questions of the haulers, of the jurisdictions, of ReGen about how to implement. So this is an educational component, again, ahead of enforcement. We did record those sessions, so they're available to email out for those that were not able to attend, and we'll be continuing education in that regard and assessing if we need any more of those workshops moving forward to assist with their compliance.
How many attendees did you have at those 2?
Ooh, the first one was at 14-ish. Is that right? And the second one was a little bit slimmer. Yeah.
That's pretty.
It wasn't
I
bad.
didn't catch that. How many?
I think it was 14 at the first, and then the second one was less, maybe 5-ish, if I recall correctly. Not a huge turnout. They were during the middle of the work week. We assessed what time would be best, and we thought some of those property management companies would be available during the work week. So that's when we held them. We held them at different times, tried to stagger those. But ultimately, I think having the recording might be one of our best assets moving forward, because when people are asked to implement directly, that's when they'll pay attention. Yeah.
Can you send that to the board as a link or whatever?
I'd be happy to. Yeah, thank you. Item number 5, we talked about the resolution that ReGen Monterey and Salinas Valley Recycles received from the County of Monterey. We brought that to the board at the last meeting for our cooperation and collaboration as it relates to implementation of 1383 specifically. Really appreciate that. And item number 6 was a request of the jurisdiction staff to sign up to participate in subgroups. At this meeting, I talked a lot about what happens at our monthly TAC meeting, but we actually do have subgroups. We have 4 at the moment. One of them is a kind of a temporary short-term group, but these groups kind of help work through specific items. Education and collection is one of them. Monitoring, reporting, and enforcement is another, and edible food recovery is a third. And then we have a 4th temporary one that deals with grant funding that kind of comes and go as needed when grant funding comes. So we just wanted to make sure some of the new members, new staff members from the jurisdictions were involved at that level and could help us work through some solutions to meeting the law. And so that was nice, nice to get some more participation in those subgroups. Yeah. Happy to answer any more questions if there are any. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. It's always very informative and we love the work the TAC is doing.
Thank you.
I do have one question, I'm sorry. You know, one of the things that comes up in some of our meetings is this is an unfunded mandate from the state. And is that absolutely true? The state has done nothing other than fund law, or are they providing some resources?
It's not technically called an unfunded mandate, and I know it feels as such, but I've heard from our consultants, HF&H, that it's not truly an unfunded mandate. That's not the correct terminology. It certainly feels largely funded. We have had in January 2022 some grant funds that came from CalRecycle for SB 1383 specifically. There was a base award amount of $20,000 per jurisdiction, and it was a non-competitive grant. Each of the member jurisdictions, we helped the member jurisdictions apply for this grant funding, came together and came up with 3 projects plus administration to allocate these grant funds. And each jurisdiction was allowed at least 20,000, and then there was more granted based upon population. And also more granted based upon how many people applied, because there was a total pool. So we received some grant funds. We put that towards procurement, of compost for the member jurisdictions. Part of the law says that each of your cities and counties has to buy back the compost. We came up with a methodology and a program to take care of that and some funding to last us through, currently I think it's 2025. So there's no procurement costs. There was an educational component, and then there was also it's an app called Carrot that we're starting to roll out, which is part of our edible food recovery efforts. It's essentially an app connecting food generators to like restaurants and hotels and that sort of thing to feeding organizations. I have a lasagna, who wants it? I want it, I'll come pick it up, that kind of a thing. So it's edible food recovery on a smaller scale than some of these larger venues would need. So those are the things that we tackled in the first grant. As of yesterday, I think it was, maybe 2 days ago, CalRecycle issued and approved another round of grant funds for the member jurisdictions. It was initially drafted as $50,000, and when it was approved at the board, it was $75,000 base award. So each of your member jurisdictions, should you choose to apply, and we will assist again with that process, will receive $75,000 at least for implementation of this law. So we'll again form a subgroup. This is one of the subgroups that I was mentioning, that temporary one, to analyze how those funds should be applied. Should they be used on existing projects? Are there new elements that we want to take on? And bring that forward to the entire TAC, and I'll again report out on that on a regular basis. But we have not met as a subgroup to discuss those projects for this second round of funding yet.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I think it's really important that that gets publicized in some way, either through the Holler newsletter or something. Because so many people think this is just a burden on each city and nothing has come in to help. And to dispel that misinformation, I think is really important. So maybe each TAC member who goes back to their jurisdictions can also be encouraged to report those grants and what it goes to.
Okay.
It's important.
And perhaps Mike can explain the logic behind why they call it it's not an unfunded. Mike, I see your hand up.
That's exactly what I was gonna address. The state does not consider it an unfunded mandate because they only consider unfunded mandates for government services. They consider solid waste to be an enterprise service, which means you can raise rates to pay for it. So in their mind, it's not an unfunded mandate because you can raise rates. And we all disagree with that, but that's their position.
Thanks for the clarification, Mike, on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Until the next question.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to other correspondence. I don't believe we have any other correspondence either. Okay, thank you. General Manager Communications.
Thank you, Chair. At this time, I have a few general manager comments. The first one, I would like to thank Supervisor Rudasky and all the members of the Board of Supervisors for the road repair that we got on Del Monte, right across the railroad tracks. Applause. Yes, and it came very timely, it came very fast after the discussion. You can already see the line markings for the restriping that will come.
Oh, they were out there striping.
Yeah, and so we will have that corrected, and then we also have a project at that entrance sometime in the future as well that will add to, you know, the new look, the new feel. We're not gonna see cars bobbing and weaving, so a big appreciation to all of the Board of Supervisors and especially our director here, Supervisor Rudasky, that helped push that up along with all the other members of our board as well. Thank you. Today, reminder, 12:30 start for the biochar ribbon cutting ceremony. I was able to attend the Special Districts Association meeting. At that meeting, we had a guest speaker, Tina Nieto. She was able to give us her update as being the incumbent sheriff for the last 7 months. And we got all the, you know, feedback of what's working well. I really appreciated her experiences over her first 7 months, because some of the things that were important for me in my first year are some of those same pillars that are important to her: building relationships, building the trust amongst her workforce, you know, giving them the ability to have positive experience and avoid the negative ones. And so those have been some of the challenges. She's also experienced a lot of items, the 8-hour standoff, other items that have come through. So her shared experiences were really good, and we were able to network a little bit after the special district with other folks that were in attendance. So that was a great meeting for me.
What's the 8-hour standoff?
They had an 8-hour standoff in the city of Salinas, and it brought to light for her that there is some additional needs in what we do for law enforcement. The sheriff department actually serves eviction notices, and she shared her experience of the whole ordeal and why she thought it was important. An officer was shot in that scenario, and it was an item that she had to deal with right away, and realize that there is probably some practices that they want to put in place when they're serving folks. And, you know, what can change in this process so that we don't have a duplication of that incident. So very, very, very professional aspect of all her approaches that she's trying to take with the community. So I'm really excited to have her in her position. I thought she represented the role in a professional manner, and shared a lot of the instances and items that she had to deal with while dealing with those scenarios. So I thought it was a great presentation.
We should tell her we're looking for a new police chief, man, maybe she can.
So I thought it was very important. She used those experiences to carry over on what worked really well for her in the city of Marina. So she did give the accolades to the PD in Marina. Thank you. We also, with the scale house, we had awareness that, you know, the lines are driving some conduct and behavior. And we had a meeting, and it was mentioned in one of my prior meetings or general manager notes that we wanted to do a de-escalation training. I want to thank Berta and the HR team that helped put together the trainings over the last, several days. And we almost got 100% completion of all our frontline employees, all our managers and supervisors, all the staff here at ReGen to go through a 1 hour de-escalation opportunity. You give some fundamentals. It was really encompassing on some basics that we can apply and what the results do for our organization as a positive representation or a negative experience in those interactions and how we deal with it. So I thought it was very important for us to share. We also put out our employee surveys and we recently got the results back. We'll come back with this board and share a little bit of those findings and what we can continue to work on to address some of the employee concerns that come from the everyday workforce. We are also postponing our August committee and board meetings for the month of August. So I hope you all enjoy August off and maybe get some vacations in, and we'll resume our personnel and finance committee in September 6th. Sunday, August 13th, we have a family picnic for our employees here at ReGen. You guys are all welcome to join us. It is at Royal Oak Park, and we can expect the fun to start right around 12 o'clock in the afternoon. Footballs, volleyballs, cornhole toss, a little bit of everything, and it'd be a good opportunity for the board to meet some of the frontline employees and some of the special people that make it happen every day here at ReGen Monterey. I also, we have our Safe and Sound Week. We just finished our National Safety Month last month, and we now entered the month of August with Safe and Sound Week. So we're continuing our safety campaigns. I'd like to thank Loriana, our safety manager back there, and the team and everybody that brings alignment to our safety culture that we're here. We have a great record and we want to continue that. So campaigns like this are very important. It'll be a Monday through Friday, and we have a scheduled list of events that will be occurring. And I think that is it for me, Chair. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
A lot of good information. Thank you, Felipe. And moving on to board member comments. Just a couple of comments. First, I hope all of you can try and stay for the 12:30 ribbon cutting. I'm going to drag this meeting out as long as we can. So and then just reflecting on my previous comment, I was maybe a little hard. I mean, I want to acknowledge that all the things that have been done of late, the modernization of the, using the computer aided system and GIS for the landfill, handling all, a lot more vehicles coming in. I know there's a lot of good things going on there, so I want to be clear that
no worries. We can take the hard with the bid, and we appreciate it because it does have us take a big vested interest in what's important for the board. So thank you, Chair. The comments are appreciated.
All right. So I guess we're moving on to closed session. Okay, please read us into closed session, and I'll see if there's any public comment on our closed session. And
Very well. The closed session this afternoon is one item from the government code, which is to review a matter of labor negotiations and to confer with the Myers Noise Brown Act representative. This is for an unrepresented employee of the city manager, the general manager, excuse me.
all right, thank you. Is there any public comment yet on the closed session item? Please approach the podium or raise your hand online if you would like to make public comment on our closed session item. All right, seeing none, I am closing public comment on our closed session item. Thank you, everybody. Back out of closed session. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, yes, I will report out of closed session. The closed session was held this afternoon. The board met on the matter listed on the agenda, which was one matter of labor negotiations. There was information provided and reviewed, and direction was provided. There was no action taken this afternoon on any compensation to be furnished to the general manager. Hence, there is no reportable action taken during the closed session this afternoon. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. And seeing no further business, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.